Welcome to the Thinking Business podcast series, brought to you by Charles & Hamlins. Thinking Business is our series in which we delve into the dynamic world of business and interview leaders in their sectors to find out more about the opportunities and challenges that they face and to delve more into their career and the opportunities that they see coming for their sector. I'm Victoria Robertson, a partner in the data and commercial team at Char Eeles, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Char Eeles from Ocado. Welcome, Char.
Thanks very much for having me.
So, Char, first of all, thank you very much for making the time to meet with us because I know that you're a very, very, very busy woman. So the first thing I want to find out really is just more about your role, your story, and what you actually do at Ocado.
Absolutely. So I'm Char Eeles. I have been at Ocado for 13 years. My job title is Supplier Funded Content Lead, which to everyone else actually means that I look after retail media. So anything that our suppliers externally brand and host on site comes through me and my team.
Amazing. And what kind of led you to Ocado?
So I'm a web designer by trade. I have worked in a variety of different environments, but retail is typically my favourite.
Was kind of the world of online grocery something you were previously interested in, or was it just that the job came up?
Yeah, so I'd worked in grocery before. I'd worked for Tesco.com, and I found that grocery was something I just naturally understood. I naturally understood shopping habits. I love customer experience. I've got a master's degree in that type of thing, so I absolutely adore understanding how the customer brain works. So it just felt like a natural fit.
Amazing. So do you think that kind of customer insight is something that has to be done with technology and AI now?
For you to do it well, absolutely.
Okay.
It just needs to be hand in hand. They are natural partners. For you to understand how your customer navigates and what they're thinking and what their next step might be, it's just a crucial part of what you're doing. And to just ladder that into all your decision making at every point, it just means that the customer's getting the best experience they possibly can.
So I'm really interested about this emotional grocery shopping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me more.
So I think if you imagine that you are going to do your weekly shop in a bricks and mortar superstore, you navigate the store via the aisles that you are familiar with. So your attachment to your local store is a real thing that's embedded into your experience and into your customer journey. So, for example, in my local store, I start at the fruit and veg. So in my head, whenever I do my shopping, I always mentally start at the fruit and veg. And we put an awful lot of insights into the layout of our online supermarket to work out exactly what the next process would be. Where do you go next? So you start buying your fruit and veg. Where do you go next naturally? What are you then going to go and look for? How do you make that journey as seamless as possible because you don't have that bricks and mortar store?
And so would you have kind of different journeys for different fruit and veg then, presumably, because if I buy carrots, you're not going to direct me to double cream, but strawberries you are.
So we work through what you might buy, but then as a part of that, what's the alternative that you'll buy in conjunction with it? So what's the cross-sell? What's the natural hand-in-hand moment that you might put the two things together on a plate? How does that work? And we have an algorithm that factors that into every decision. So every shopper at Ocado has a slightly different version of the algorithm that they're presented with, entirely based on their shopping habits. And the more customers shop, the more we learn and the more we know.
Excellent. So I want to kind of delve into the customer insights in a bit more depth. But first of all, I was just wondering if you could tell me more about some of the other ways in which Ocado is using artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. So the joy of artificial intelligence at Ocado is that it's factored in absolutely everything we do. So we are dynamic by design. It's an Ocado favourite phrase. And we have over 100 applications that use AI as core as part of that journey. So it could be anything in the warehouse where we have our very own robots, to how the robots navigate each other. They drive within 5 millimetres of each other. So they navigate this giant grid, and there is an algorithm that learns how these robots respond and how they move and the weight of the products that they're carrying. And it's learning all the time. But all of that learning is based on initial data and insights of simulations that have programmed how well those robots should be managing that grid in the first place.
And so thinking around the kind of more manual style of jobs, like, well, the delivery drivers and the people who work in the warehouse, what's their reaction to kind of Ocado's adoption of AI And how well are they kind of getting on with the integration into their daily role?
Yeah, I think that especially once you've seen the robotic grid, I think it is a sight to behold, and I think that they can see the benefits that outweigh the cons. Obviously, there is always the challenge of, are robots going to take away our jobs? And I think it's an absolute factor that's played into the Ocado values, that it's about working in harmony together.
Do you think that Ocado could go back now to not using robots?
No, honestly, I don't. I think it's absolutely propelling us forward and in the right type of way. I think that we've created a robot hand, for example, that can pick up an egg. So it's as gentle that it can physically pick up an egg. But it can't do that in quicker time than a human hand can pick up an egg. So I think that there are some things that we just need to appreciate, that the human aspect of that absolutely brings the better value to the table. Whereas from the weight point of view, lifting kilo bags of potatoes, when the robots are capable of doing that, that's absolutely the right way for us to be.
What about driverless vehicles? Is that something that you think Ocado will look at in time?
I do think it's been a subject that's been raised. I don't think it's something that has been factored into the long-term plan. I could be wrong. But I know that when, for example, Amazon started to discover drone technology, it was absolutely something that wasn't felt to be right for Ocado. When we don't have bricks and mortar stores, the driver is the face of Ocado. Yeah. That's the only version of Ocado that you ever see. And that interaction is just so important. The mantra for the Ocado driver is literally to take your shopping to your dining room table. It's not to drop it on your doorstep. It's about having that human interaction. And I think everybody is very conscious of not losing that wherever possible, because that is what brings the joy. That's what brings the tone. Yeah. That's the face.
But with drivers, you told me a really interesting story the other day, didn't you, about the Queen's funeral?
Absolutely, yeah.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that we play into every scenario is these worst case moments. So how do you manage when the chips are down? And as every company did, there was a plan in place for what happened when the Queen sadly died. And it's not a scenario that we've ever had to come up against before, because obviously in all of our lifetimes we've only typically had one monarch. And what that meant was then the algorithm needed to shift to learn what road closures would be in place for the funeral, for example, how long those road closures would take, what that impact on the traffic in those surrounding areas would be, whether or not we were physically capable of delivering to those houses and those flats around the palace and things like that, or whether or not actually for that point of time we had to cancel deliveries and we had to physically turn off the delivery slots for those customers in those areas at that time. And the algorithm obviously doesn't have that to learn from, because it's not a scenario that it's ever come up against before. So we had to create simulations that would work out what that route planning would look like, what that traffic might look like, what the potential of that congestion would look like, to be able to allocate the right time slots and the right time frames for people to still have their shopping and their deliveries managed. We absolutely have some people who are really vulnerable on our books. And how do we make sure that we're delivering to the people who need us most at the times that they need us most, because they can't get out to get their shopping because the roads are closed?
So that's a really great example of kind of the tech and the people working together.
Totally.
I suppose that's kind of one of the ethical concerns about AI, isn't it? It's kind of, is it going to replace our jobs?
Totally, yeah.
What are the other kind of ethical concerns that you have at kind of in your role or at Ocado, and how do you deal with them?
Yeah, I think it's about making sure that there is governance at all points. So there are a variety of things that come into play. One of the things specifically in my world is how the larger companies use a lot of the data that we have to be able to influence their decisions, and how do we make sure that we're managing that alongside our small suppliers. Ocado has a real invested interest in looking after the small suppliers. It really wants to get back to its roots. It's really core at being a grocer first and working out what those things look like. And people really love Ocado's bespoke nature. Mm-hmm. So I think we have something like 45,000 products, and a lot of those are us backing smaller suppliers from smaller, more remote regions that are helping to replace things like your local butcher that's disappeared off your high street. Yeah. How do we still bring that element of the shop back into your shopping? And I think there is a real ethical undertone that we factor in in making sure that we're treating everybody differently, so that we don't just use AI and serve that data to the big guys. We're serving that data across the board, making sure that all of those decisions are fair and equal across the team.
What about the environmental impact of the use of artificial intelligence? How do you kind of deal with that at Ocado?
Yeah, I think obviously the biggest aspect that we have is our vans, and what that looks like from an economical point of view, but also from an environmental impact and what those vans look like in what space. We use natural gas to power a lot of our HGVs, for example, and we have electric vans in London to make sure that we've reduced the impact of those. And I think we use an AI algorithm to work out where the right method is in the right place. So when you're on a country lane, for example, actually, is an electric vehicle the right thing to be in that space? What's the most fuel efficient version to be in that space? And I think that that's something that plays into that environmental impact all the time. What's the quickest route those vans can take to make sure that they're on the road for as minimal time as possible, to make sure that you're navigating that? And AI does play an important part in that.
So thinking more around, obviously as a lawyer, I'm always kind of interested in kind of regulations, and AI in particular is a kind of a space where the law is changing.
Totally.
So how do you keep on top of changing regulations and laws at Ocado?
So we have an absolutely phenomenal legal team, and the joy of the model at Ocado is that because it still believes it's a startup mentality, even though we're just about to celebrate our 25th birthday, it does things in a slightly different way. So we don't just have subset teams that look after different areas. So we don't just engage with the legal team when we need to. They're just a part and parcel of all of the decision making that happens. So they're factored into everything. They're factored into all decisions. They're factored into the trade agreements that go through. But as part of AI, they're also factored into that basic level of common sense as to what should we be doing. So just because we can do it, should we do it? And I think the legal team are the perfect people to do that sense check of that governance, to be like that just because we are physically capable of delivering what you're asking does not mean it's necessarily ethical or that it aligns with the Ocado values. And the legal team are really good at providing that sense check.
I think kind of acting ethically with AI is just, it's got to be part of the use of AI, isn't it? And we hear that from so many clients. You can't just kind of engage with AI. You need to think, why are we doing it? How are we doing it? What's the impact going to be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just a piece of technology at our fingertips. It has the potential to be a ticking time bomb. So how do you make sure that you're using that in the right possible way with the right infrastructure around it to make sure that you're using it for the better in every possible scenario?
Yeah. What's your favourite piece of AI that you use at Ocado? If you could just pick one.
Oh, one. I think, so especially in my world, customer experience is a real integral part of what I do. And I love the fact that we have these customer insights that play into how people shop, and that we have the ability to personalise. So, for example, I'm quite a fan of a gin and tonic on a Friday night, and the algorithm itself can then present me with a variety of different gin flavours that I might factor into my shopping. And because it knows me so well and it knows my customer habit, it knows exactly what to surface. It knows what I want before I know what I want. And actually the joy of that is that every time I shop on Ocado, I always spend far longer than I intend to, because it is actually a joy to be part of the experience. And I go down a variety of beautiful little rabbit holes that show me products that I just wouldn't know existed and wouldn't be surfaced to me on a normal day. So yeah, from my world, it's definitely the AI behind the customer experience that makes my life nicer.
And at Ocado, you build your own tech, don't you? You don't buy it from third-party suppliers.
No. The bulk of the Ocado website is designed by Ocado itself. We do have some suppliers that we factor in, that we add and we bolt onto the tech that we've got, but the core technology is Ocado-owned technology.
Okay. What's the long-term vision kind of from you for the future of Ocado?
So it's personalisation is key from my world. It's how do you have those multiple touch points from a customer experience point of view. So one of the things that we're working on at the moment is how we embed content into that delivery so that the experience is greater that you feel on site. So how do you pick up an Ocado Life magazine, which is the magazine that's delivered with your shopping? How do you see a recipe on there that you come to the site and buy? And actually, as part of that recipe, you're inspired by the story that goes behind that supplier, and you learn about the supplier themselves. But then you also have 3 different ways that you could potentially use those ingredients, and you go off on 3 different directions to be able to explore things like, for example, we've got Little Moon's ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
And at the By Women Built event where we met, they were surfacing those on top of cocktails. So how do you add these beautiful little mochi balls to the top of a cocktail? And how do you have it was incredible. How do you have this completely different experience with a product that you would normally assume was a dessert that went after dinner? And I think it's that experiential moment in time for me that's a complete joy. So how do you bring that joy to a customer shop? How do you engage and delight on a daily basis? Because you're not just doing your shopping, you're part of somebody's lifestyle. And how do you grow that? How do you be part of that? How do you help their lifestyle be more engaged and more fun? And just bring a bit of joy to their shop.
Well, it's quite an amazing role. And also, I think, unfortunately, women in leadership roles are still fairly rare.
Totally.
So what are you doing to kind of inspire the next generation of women in tech and women in leadership?
Yes, well, I have 2 hats as part of that. So I am the chair of the Women's Network at Ocado. It was something that was really passionate to me, that I made sure that women were treated equally. I do come from a tech space where that's not always been the case. At university, there were 5 women and 67 men.
Really?
So there was definitely a shift in one direction. I do believe that women bring a slightly different insight to the table. So when you're talking about shopping and you're talking about it being emotive, I do think women do bring a different lens that helps enhance that experience. And I think if you've got the right balance of people in the room, you're making sure that every aspect is covered and every thought process is covered, not just where is the data and what's making the money. My second hat is I am fortunate enough to be an ambassador for women in retail media. And retail media itself is a predominantly male environment. Retail is a predominantly male environment. If you look at a board on most bricks and mortar retailers, you'll be lucky to find 1 or 2 women on the board of those retailers.
Isn't that funny? Because you'd kind of always say, well, women, I mean, maybe it's just me, but women are the bigger shoppers.
Totally.
Okay.
So at Ocado, for example, one of our core demographics is a female in her 40s with 2 children. So actually she is one of our target shoppers. And actually if you can put yourself in that mindset of what that mum will be shopping for in that moment, she's time poor. What do you need to do? What do you need to surface her in the quickest possible way? How do you need to make those, almost take the decision making out of it for her because it's just surfaced in the right place? And retail media is one of those moments that it has been very underused and misunderstood, I think, is probably the right way of looking at it. With a very male-orientated board, we watched a podcast the other day that the term that they used to coin the panels at a conference was a manel, because actually everybody at that conference was male.
Oh, really?
So the whole board was male, and there were 3 different topics covered, and all of the people at that space were male. So how do you make sure that you are bringing women into that space, that you are having those conversations, that you are making sure that you're bringing a balanced approach? Because it's not that we're saying that we want to have female-only panels, because that's not what we're looking to bring to the table. We're just looking to provide that balance, because women do hold up half the sky, so we should be represented accordingly.
Excellent. So I was just going to ask you also about the partnership between Ocado and By Women Built. If you could tell listeners a bit about that.
Yes, totally. This is a complete passion project from my point of view. I love that Ocado invests in its smaller suppliers, and fortunately, I worked with Amisha, who is one of the By Women Built team. And Amisha used to work at Ocado as one of our baby buyers many years ago. So when Amisha came and presented the idea that a lot of the small suppliers are already on our books, and how did we create the first ever female-orientated aisle that showcased all of these amazing By Women Built founders, and it was a proper passion project. I think she asked originally for a 1-pager where we would showcase 5 different suppliers, and I think she's now got a 12 category microsite with something like 1,000 different products on there, and we are telling the stories of those individual suppliers, 5 different women we're talking about each month, to make sure we're showcasing their story, because those stories are incredible. And all of those people will have made their products out of a need, out of something that they found that's missing in the market. The volume of childcare products that we have, because there is some niche that we have missed as a market, and they are trying to fix that, from eczema-based creams to the right type of thing to help your baby sleep. And it's mums that have gone out and built things in their garden sheds to make sure that those needs are covered, because if they need it, chances are another mum somewhere needs it too. And I think their stories are so empowering and so inspiring, and they deserve to have the spotlight shone on them as much as they possibly can. So yes, so the joy of my passion project is that I get to share these women's stories, because they are truly incredible, and they are the heart of Ocado.
And it sounds like they're quite in line with the Ocado values that you mentioned as well, about kind of, promoting smaller suppliers and making sure that you have a really kind of varied supplier base.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Hannah, our CEO, tells a wonderful story about how her grandfather was a grocer, and how it's so important to go back to those grassroots and appreciate where we've come from. And it's something that we shouldn't just take for granted. And even with commerce moving as it does, and big business, it's something that we shouldn't forget, that that's the heart of what we do, and that's why we do it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that shouldn't be lost. And I think Hannah is really passionate about that, and that just shines through in the fact that she will help us support those small suppliers in whatever space they can.
That's very inspiring, and thank you so much for your time. That's been really, really interesting to hear more about Ocado and about your role. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us, to be part of the Thinking Business series.
Thank you.
Okay.